There is more than one category of myth. In fact, there are three main types. The first is divine myth. With divine myths, which we will cover first, the main characters or actors are supernatural beings. These stories are mostly dealing with why the world is the way it is or some aspect of that theme. The supernatural beings in divine myth are considered superior to humans. However, we will see them this semester take shape as humans or animals, depending on what they're trying to do. We also have to keep in mind that they can control forces of nature. For instance, many of you already know that Zeus controls lightning and thunder, but did you know that Poseidon, god of the sea, controls earthquakes? Myths offer an explanation, a way of explaining natural phenomena. In addition, the conflicts among the gods can be on immense scales. Some gods might be vague concepts, while many of the gods we will cover are complete characters with their own personalities. Many divine myths take place outside human time. Some are in the very distant past, or they take place where humans do not tread. One example given is Mount Olympus, where the gods lived. While technically we can go there, in ancient times that was not likely. In ancient times, the characters of divine myth were both characters and objects of veneration. Take Zeus. We have stories about him, but there are also remains of temples for him all over Greece. As we go through divine myth, we'll see that the ancient Greeks' view of the world. Keep in mind that myths can be local too. They can explain things that happen to a particular region or place. Some divine myths are etiological, meaning that the myths explain the origin of something. The earliest myths we will cover in this class explain how the earth and even the gods came to be. Be sure to go over the differences between what myth explains and what science explains. Now, the second category are legends. These stories cover a great deal of human heroes and heroines. With this class of myth, we're exploring the human past. Your textbook states, if divine myth in oral cultures is analogous to science in modern literate Western society, legend is analogous to history. That is a perfect way to look at the legend of ancient Greece. While the central characters are human, heroes and heroines, the supernatural being gods may play a role, but they're not the primary actors in the story. We need to keep in mind that the main characters in legends are drawn from nobility. Many of them that we will read about are kings and queens and other high social rank. They also have extraordinary physical and personal qualities and are stronger, more beautiful, and more courageous than ordinary people. Most ancient Greeks believe that these characters lived once upon a time. Today, we know that we cannot prove that many of these legends really took place. Instead, we see legends as telling us more about the circumstances and concerns of its storytellers than it does about life in the distant past. Do keep in mind that there are elements of truth in legends. See your book for the example about Mycenae. Finally, we have folk tales, and in these, the characters are either regular people, us, or animals. These tales often teach or justify behavior. Think Aesop fables. Mostly animals as characters, and each teaches a lesson of some sort. You're already familiar with them if you recall Cinderella and Snow White. While we call them fairy tales, they are folk tales according to our definition. And Aesop, that I mentioned a moment ago, well, he was a 6th century BCE Greek writer. Unlike legends, the ancient Greeks did not believe that the characters of folk tales actually existed. Be sure to read about the universal themes often covered in folk tale. After all, they often deal with ideas like good will triumph in the end and evil will be punished. We can only dream, and I guess the Greeks did too. The most important takeaway about folk tales is universality of folk tale types or motifs. Frankly, they reach around the whole globe. There's a bit of foreshadowing when Powell points out that some of these motifs will appear when we read about Perseus later this semester. This one is simple. In the book, we are often learning about gods. If a religion has one god, then we will capitalize the word God. That goes for the world's three main religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It also goes for other monotheistic religions in the world that I haven't named. If a religion has numerous gods, then God will be lowercase. That means for Greek and Roman myth, God is lowercase. There is also a duality for many of the characters we will learn about. For instance, Zeus is a god, but he is also a character in many of the myths we'll read. Now, there is also a distinction between myth and religion. Myths are traditional stories, while religion is belief. We will go with your book's description of belief, what you accept with or without proof as a basis for action. In ancient Greek times, people believed that Zeus caused the rain to fall. In times of drought, people would sacrifice animals in the belief that by appealing to Zeus, there would be rain. Myths justify a religious practice or behavior, but we can tell a myth without engaging in religious behavior. There are 4 things that we will explore with our study of mythology. The first one is the recording and compiling of a given culture's myths. We will see how these myths came down, who eventually recorded them, and how many of them survived. We'll also have the analysis of the role of specific myths played within a culture. We will see how some myths dictated behavior or described the past as the society understood it. We have the study of how one's culture's myths are related to those of other cultures. Would you be surprised to learn that there is some overlap between ancient Greek myth and ancient Egyptian myth? We will look at that and even more. Finally, we have the assessment of the lasting human significance of specific myths or groups of myths. Because of this class, you will come up with some of your own conclusions about the importance of these myths today. Be sure to read this section in your book, as I've only skimmed the surface with my comments. Pal goes over pronunciation of ancient Greek words. You don't have to get them right, but you should try to say them out loud to yourself. I will try my best with the pronunciations, but frankly, I'll mangle some of them. Please be kind when you notice I mispronounce something. And also keep in mind that different cultures will pronounce these words differently. So unless you know ancient Greek, you are not the expert in pronunciation. One of the easiest examples that comes to mind is Oedipus. I and most Americans will say Oedipus, while most British people will say Oedipus. Both pronunciations are acceptable. There is a map in your textbook on the back cover. Pause for a moment and take a moment, look at your book, and go to the back cover. I want you to refer to it often. Try to imagine where the stories take place. Many of the stories we will cover are regional, so associating the characters with their regions is helpful. If there is anything missing from your notes, be sure to go back to the textbook and reread the chapter. No doubt the next chapter is dense and even tough. Do your best to get through it. You don't have to dwell and beat yourself into memorizing it at all. You must read, but I'll go over the key things during the lecture. Trust me, this chapter is worth it because it will allow you to make all kinds of connections throughout the rest of the semester.